Well, one of hip-hop's most popular artists of the 90s died yesterday, known as Heavy D, real name Dwight Arrington Myers.
Heavy D was working on a book before he died. Kim Porter was working on a book before she died. And Al B. Sure was working on the documentary of his life.
He called himself the overweight lover, and hip-hop loved him back. From 1987 to 1994, Heavy D and the Boys turned rap into a party, proved you didn't need to curse to be cool, and made crossover success look effortless. He was the first rapper signed to Uptown Records, the man who gave Diddy his first job, the artist who rapped on Michael Jackson's Jam and Janet Jackson's All Right. He was royalty, and everybody knew it. But on November 8, 2011, Heavy D collapsed outside his Beverly Hills condo and died at age 44, exactly 1 month after his comeback performance at a Michael Jackson tribute concert in Wales. The LA County coroner called it a blood clot from the long flight. The internet called it something else.
You want to know what they all had in common, though? The survivors and the late of Uptown Records, they were all writing tell-all books.
Because here's the thing. Everyone who helped build Uptown Records with Diddy is now dead. Andre Harrell, gone in 2020. Kim Porter, gone in 2018. Heavy D, gone in 2011. And according to whispers that won't die, they were all writing tell-all books before they passed. Coincidence? Maybe. But in an industry built on secrets, silence, and bodies that don't talk back, folks started asking questions Hollywood didn't want to answer. This is the story of Heavy D, the man who made hip-hop smile, and the death that made the world suspicious.
And hip-hop pioneer Heavy D died last night.
He was born Dwight Arrington Myers on May 24, 1967, in Mandeville, Jamaica, a small town tucked in the hills of Manchester Parish where the air smells like sugarcane and the music never stops. His mother, Eulalie, was a nurse. His father, Clifford, was a machine technician and a master jerk pork cook. Dwight was the youngest of 5 children, and from the beginning, he was different. Bigger, louder, more charismatic than the other kids on the block. When he was 4 years old, the Myers family left Jamaica and moved to Mount Vernon, New York, a working-class city just north of the Bronx, where Caribbean immigrants and black families were building something new. The house was full of music. His mother played reggae constantly, dance hall rhythms that reminded them of home, and young Dwight soaked it all in. My mom used to always play hip-hop around the crib, but more so than that, she played reggae. And I grew up on reggae music more than I grew up on hip-hop, he'd later say. But Mount Vernon was where hip-hop was being born, and Dwight couldn't ignore it. He spent most of his childhood hanging out with his older brother Floyd and his friend Mo, listening to the early rap records coming out of New York City, trying to figure out how to do it himself. By junior high, he was making his own demo tapes, writing his own rhymes, dreaming of a career in a genre that barely existed yet. The neighborhood kids gave him his nickname when he was 15, Heavy D, and it stuck. He wasn't ashamed of his size. He owned it, turned it into swagger. While other rappers were trying to be hard, Dwight was trying to be smooth, confident, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and make everyone feel good. He formed a group with his high school friends, DJ Eddie F., Trouble T-Roy, and G Wiz, and they called themselves Heavy D and the Boys. They performed at parties, practiced in basements, recorded demos on whatever equipment they could afford. Then Heavy D went to Atlantic City, gambled, and won $1,500. Most people would have spent it on clothes or a car. Heavy D bought electronics and poured it back into the group. They shopped their demo tape to every label in New York. Most ignored them, but one man heard something different. Andre Harrell, a young executive at Def Jam, who was about to launch his own label called Uptown Records. He wanted a new sound, something that could bridge hip-hop and R&B, something that could get played on the radio without scaring white audiences. When he heard Heavy D's version of Mr. Big Stuff, he knew he'd found it. Andre Harrell showed up at Eulalie Meyer's door in Mount Vernon with a contract in his hand. Heavy D's mother had made her son a deal: 1 year to make it in music, or he was going back to college. Within 6 months, Andre Harrell was at my house asking me to sign the papers, she'd later recall. And then everything changed. In 1986, Heavy D and the Boys became the first group signed to Uptown Records, Andre Harrell's brand new label under MCA. Andre had a vision that most of hip-hop thought was crazy. He wanted rap that your mother wouldn't turn off, hip-hop that could play at weddings and cookouts, beats that made you move your hips instead of just nodding your head. He needed an artist who could deliver all of that without losing the culture. He found that artist in Heavy D. The debut album, Living Large, dropped in 1987, and it was everything Andre promised. Mr. Big Stuff hit the radio first, a playful, infectious track that sampled Gene Knight's classic soul record and flipped it into something brand new. Then came Overweight Lovers in the House, and that's when Heavy D became more than just a rapper. He became a movement. The overweight lover persona was revolutionary because it was joyful. Heavy D didn't apologize for his size, didn't hide behind baggy clothes or try to play tough to compensate. He leaned into it, made it sexy, made it confident. He rapped about women loving him, about being smooth, about living large in every sense of the word. And it worked. The album went platinum. By 1989, Heavy D had perfected the formula. Big Time hit #1 on the R&B charts and went platinum within months. The sound was undeniable: hip-hop drums, R&B melodies, sing-along choruses that made crowds lose their minds. They called it New Jack Swing, and Heavy D was one of its architects. Teddy Riley had the production, Bobby Brown had the moves, but Heavy D had the voice and the charisma that made it all feel effortless. Then came the ultimate validation. Janet Jackson called. She wanted Heavy D to rap on a song called All Right from her album Rhythm Nation 1814. This was 1989, when pop stars didn't regularly collaborate with rappers, when hip-hop was still fighting to be taken seriously. But Janet trusted Heavy D because his lyrics were clean, his energy was positive, and his talent was undeniable. The song became one of the biggest hits of the year, and Heavy D's guest verse became one of the most memorable moments on one of the most iconic albums of the decade. Heavy D wasn't just a rapper anymore. He was a crossover king, the bridge between hip-hop and mainstream America. MTV played his videos. Pop radio played his singles. Black families loved him. White families trusted him. He had figured out how to be authentically hip-hop without alienating anyone, and that made him invaluable. For 4 years straight, Heavy D dominated. Radio couldn't get enough. The Boys toured constantly. The platinum plaques kept coming. He was living the dream he'd rehearsed in that Mount Vernon basement. But just when Heavy D was on top of the world, tragedy was waiting in Indianapolis. Heavy D wasn't just winning, he was rewriting the rules. By the early 90s, he'd proven that hip-hop could be joyful, sophisticated, and massively successful all at once. While West Coast gangsta rap was taking over with NWA and East Coast crews were getting harder and grittier, Heavy D stayed in his lane, positive, melodic, family-friendly, and somehow became one of the biggest stars in the game. In 1992, Michael Jackson called. Not Janet this time, Michael. The king of pop wanted Heavy D to rap on a song called Jam for his Dangerous album. Think about that for a second. Michael Jackson, the biggest entertainer on the planet, handpicked Heavy D out of every rapper in the world. Why? Because Heavy D's lyrics were clean, his energy was pure, and his skill was undeniable. He became the first and only rapper to work with both Michael and Janet Jackson, a feat that still hasn't been matched. The Jam video was iconic. Michael dancing in a warehouse while Heavy D delivered bars with his signature baritone flow. It was validation at the highest level. Hip-hop had arrived in pop culture, and Heavy D was leading the charge. Then came the theme songs. In living color, the groundbreaking sketch comedy show that launched the careers of Jim Carrey and Jennifer Lopez, hired Heavy D to create their opening theme. Every Sunday night, millions of people heard Heavy D's voice. Later, MAD-TV did the same thing. Heavy D wasn't just a recording artist anymore, he was a cultural fixture, the soundtrack to Black excellence on television. Between 1987 and 1997, Heavy D released 7 consecutive albums that all hit the R&B top 10. 7 in a row. That's consistency most artists only dream about. Peaceful Journey, Blue Funk, Nuttin' But Love, each one went gold or platinum. Each one had singles that dominated Black radio. Each one proved Heavy D wasn't a fluke. He was everywhere. MTV, BET, award shows, movie soundtracks, even acting roles on shows like Rock and Living Single. He wasn't just a rapper, he was a multimedia star, the kind of artist labels dream about because he could do it all without controversy, without scandal, without making anyone uncomfortable. But here's what people didn't see behind the platinum plaques and the crossover success. Heavy D was carrying weight that had nothing to do with his size. He'd already lost someone close to him, someone he considered a brother. And that loss changed him in ways the music industry didn't want to acknowledge. July 15th, 1990. Market Square Arena in Indianapolis. Heavy D and the Boys had just finished opening for Public Enemy, and the energy backstage was electric. The crew was horseplaying on an elevated exit ramp, rolling trash cans, laughing, riding the high of another sold-out show. Trouble T-Roy, Troy Dixon, 22 years old, the group's dancer and hype man, jumped onto a 4-foot retaining wall to dodge one of the barrels. He lost his balance, fell over 20 feet, hit the concrete below. At that point, we just liked slow motion, Eddie F. would later recall. Everybody was just jumping around and just yelling, and everything just turned blurry. Troy Dixon was rushed to the hospital. He never regained consciousness. He died that night, 22 years old, full of life one moment and gone the next. The coroner ruled it an accidental death. Just a tragic fall, wrong place, wrong time, a split second that ended everything. Heavy D was devastated. Troy wasn't just a dancer. He was family. They'd grown up together in Mount Vernon, built the group together, dreamed together. And now Heavy D had to call Troy's mother and tell her that her son wasn't coming home. The tour stopped. The album cycle paused. Heavy D went quiet. For months he couldn't write, couldn't perform, couldn't do anything but grieve. People in the industry told him to move on, to get back in the studio, to keep the momentum going. But Heavy D refused to rush the pain. When he finally returned to music, he did it the only way he knew how, with honesty. In 1991, Heavy D released Peaceful Journey, an album dedicated entirely to Troy's memory. The lead single, Now That We Found Love, was a bittersweet celebration of life and loss, built on a sample of Third World's reggae classic. It became one of Heavy D's biggest hits, reaching the R&B top 5 and nearly cracking the pop top 10. The album went platinum, but for Heavy D, the success felt hollow. No amount of sales could bring Troy back. The hip-hop world mourned with him. Pete Rock and CL Smooth, two producers who'd worked closely with Heavy D, released They Reminisce Over You, TROY, in 1992, a haunting, beautiful tribute that became one of the most revered songs in hip-hop history. To this day, TROY is synonymous with loss, with remembering the ones we've loved and lost, with the cost of chasing dreams in a world that can take everything from you in a second. Heavy D kept going. He released more albums, kept making hits, kept smiling for the cameras. But something had shifted. He was more careful now, more aware of how fragile it all was. Troy's death planted a seed in Heavy D's mind. A quiet understanding that, in this business, the people you love don't always make it out alive. Back in Mount Vernon, there was a kid who wouldn't leave Heavy D alone. His name was Sean Combs, but everyone called him Puffy, and he followed Heavy D everywhere. To the studio, to the corner store, to parties, everywhere. He was relentless, asking questions, watching how Heavy D moved, studying the business like his life depended on it. Heavy D's mother remembers it clearly. He would follow him everywhere he went, and Dwight loved him. Thought, he said, "You are getting to be a pain in the neck. You know that." But Heavy D saw something in young Puffy. Hunger, vision, the same drive he'd had when he was grinding in basements trying to get signed. So Heavy D went to Andre Harrell and made a request. "Do me a favor, just hire Puffy." Andre did. In the late 80s, Sean Puffy Combs became an intern at Uptown Records, and Heavy D became the unofficial mentor to the kid who wouldn't stop hustling. Puffy worked his way up fast, too fast, some would say. He went from intern to A&R executive to president of Uptown, all before he turned 25. But Puffy had a problem. He was too aggressive, too opportunistic, too willing to step on people to get what he wanted. In 1993, Andre Harrell fired him. Puffy didn't disappear. He took everything he'd learned at Uptown and started his own label, Bad Boy Records. And he took the heat with him. While Uptown stayed smooth and melodic, Bad Boy went harder, darker, more aggressive. Puffy signed the notorious B.I.G., and hip-hop would never be the same. Meanwhile, Heavy D was making his own pivot. In 1996, he became vice president of A&R at Uptown Records, making him the first rapper to lead a major music label. It was a historic achievement, proof that rappers could be executives, that hip-hop minds could run the business and not just perform in it. Heavy D was proud. He'd made it to the other side of the desk. But becoming an executive meant less time performing. Heavy D released Waterbed Hev in 1997, his first solo album without The Boys, and it hit number 9 on the Billboard Hot 200, number 3 on the R&B charts. It was a success, but it didn't feel the same. The industry was changing. Gangsta rap was dominating the charts. Tupac and Biggie were at war. Hip-hop was getting darker, more explicit, more violent. And Heavy D's positive, family-friendly style felt out of place. He stepped back, focused on building other artists, did some acting, made smart investments in real estate. The royalties from his catalog kept the money flowing. 7 platinum and gold albums meant he'd never have to worry about rent again. He was comfortable. He was respected. But he wasn't the center of attention anymore, and maybe that was by design. For 15 years, Heavy D stayed quiet. No tours, no new albums, no drama. He watched from the sidelines as the industry he helped build moved on without him. He watched as Puffy, the kid he'd told Andre to hire, became Diddy, became Puff Daddy, became a billionaire mogul with an empire that dwarfed everything Uptown ever was. And he watched as, one by one, the people who built Uptown Records started to disappear. October 8th, 2011. Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, Wales. 40,000 people packed into the arena for Michael Forever, the tribute concert, a celebration of Michael Jackson's life and music 2 years after his death. The lineup was stacked. Christina Aguilera, Smokey Robinson, CeeLo Green, Gladys Knight, and Heavy D, the man who'd rapped on Jam nearly 20 years earlier, the only rapper Michael Jackson ever trusted enough to collaborate with. It was Heavy D's first live performance in 15 years. Katherine Jackson, Michael's mother, had personally asked him to be there. Heavy D gave his entire life to the world through his love, his music, and his devotion to healing the planet, she said. Heavy D couldn't say no. This wasn't just a gig. It was history, legacy, a chance to remind the world who he was and what he'd meant to hip-hop. He stepped on that stage, 44 years old, heavier than he'd ever been, sweating under the lights, breathing hard but smiling. The crowd roared. For those few minutes, Heavy D was back, the overweight lover, the king of crossover, the man who made hip-hop feel like joy. When he finished, the applause was deafening. But his body wasn't what it used to be. The performance took everything out of him. Backstage, he caught his breath, posed for photos, hugged old friends. Then, he boarded a plane back to Los Angeles. A transcontinental flight, nearly 11 hours in the air, cramped in an airplane seat designed for people half his size. For hours, Heavy D sat immobile, his legs pressed against the seat in front of him. His blood flow slowed. Deep in his calf, a clot was forming. Deep vein thrombosis, DVT, a silent killer that forms when blood pools in the legs during long periods of inactivity. Doctors would later say the flight was a major contributing factor, especially for someone Heavy D's size, with his heart condition, with his sedentary lifestyle over the past 15 years. Heavy D landed in Los Angeles, went home to his Beverly Hills condo, and tried to get back to normal life. October turned into November. He went shopping, ran errands, worked on some music. On the outside, everything seemed fine. But inside, that blood clot was moving, traveling through his veins, making its way toward his lungs. November 8, 2011. Around 11:25 in the morning, Heavy D returned to his Beverly Hills condo on the 400 block of North Maple Drive after a shopping trip. He was walking up the exterior pathway to his unit when it happened. A sharp pain in his chest, his breath suddenly gone, his legs giving out beneath him. He collapsed on the walkway, conscious but gasping for air. Neighbors heard the commotion and called 911. Paramedics arrived within minutes, found Heavy D struggling to breathe, and rushed him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Doctors worked on him in the emergency room, but there was nothing they could do. At age 44, exactly 1 month after his comeback performance in Wales, Heavy D was pronounced dead. The news hit the internet like a shockwave. Heavy D? Dead? How? He'd just performed in front of 40,000 people. He'd just been on stage, smiling, alive. What happened? Initial reports were confusing. Heavy D's cousin told reporters he'd been suffering from pneumonia. The media ran with it. Rapper Heavy D dies of pneumonia. But the LA County Coroner's Office said the preliminary autopsy was inconclusive, that they needed more tests, more time. That word, inconclusive, made people nervous. Why couldn't they figure out what killed him? 6 weeks later, on December 27, 2011, the official report came out. Pulmonary embolism caused by deep vein thrombosis. In plain English, a blood clot had formed in Heavy D's leg, traveled to his lung, and blocked the artery that supplied oxygen to his heart. Contributing factors: heart disease, obesity, and the recent transcontinental flight from Wales. The toxicology report showed no drugs, no alcohol, just cough syrup in his system. The coroner ruled it natural causes. Case closed. But the streets didn't buy it. The internet didn't buy it. Something felt off. Heavy D was 44. He'd just made a comeback. He had projects in the works. And now he was dead from a blood clot? People started asking questions. Why did the cousin say pneumonia if it was a pulmonary embolism? Why did it take 6 weeks to get the autopsy results? Why did Heavy D collapse outside his condo instead of inside? Was someone with him? Who benefits from Heavy D being gone? Then the conspiracy theories started. YouTube videos with ominous titles. Heavy D's death wasn't just tragic, it was planned. Why everyone thinks Diddy killed Heavy D. Comment sections flooded with speculation. Poisoning, life insurance scams, industry hit jobs. And then came the pattern that people couldn't ignore. Heavy D died in 2011. Kim Porter, Diddy's ex-girlfriend and Andre Harrell's former personal assistant at Uptown Records, died in 2018 with pneumonia-like symptoms. Andre Harrell, the man who founded Uptown Records and gave both Heavy D and Diddy their starts, died in 2020 of heart failure. 3 people, 3 deaths, all connected to Uptown Records, all gone within 9 years, and the only major figure from Uptown's original lineup still standing. Sean "Diddy" Combs. In 2022, singer Jaguar Wright, a controversial figure known for making explosive, often unverified allegations about the music industry, went public with a theory that would go viral. She claimed that Heavy D, Andre Harrell, and Kim Porter were all writing tell-all books about the music industry before they died. Uptown Records started with 5 people: Andre Harrell, Al B. Sure, Heavy D, and Puffy, and Kim was the longest-working employee. Wright said in an interview, "Kim is dead, Heavy D is dead, Andre Harrell is dead. The only 2 left are Puffy and Al almost died. Isn't that interesting?" She went further. They were all writing tell-all books. Has Puffy ever been in a coma? Has anything happened to him? He must be the luckiest mother e'er, because it seems like everybody that worked at Uptown Records from the very beginning are gone. Wright has a history of making unsubstantiated claims and has faced legal and mental health challenges, so her credibility is questioned. But her words resonated because they fed into a narrative people already believed: that Diddy's rise to power came at a cost, that the bodies around him weren't coincidences, that Heavy D knew too much and paid the price. No evidence has ever surfaced to support these theories. No tell-all book manuscript, no witness testimony, no police investigation. The LA County coroner closed Heavy D's case as natural causes, and that's where it stands legally. But the coroner closed the case. The streets? They kept it open. Heavy D left behind a catalog that still sounds fresh: 7 consecutive R and B top 10 albums, platinum plaques lining the walls, a voice that defined an era. He was the first rapper to work with both Michael and Janet Jackson. He was the first rapper to become vice president of a major music label. He gave the world Pete Rock and CL Smooth's They Reminisce Over You, TROY, a song that still plays at every hip-hop funeral, every memorial, every moment when we need to remember the ones we've lost. He proved that hip-hop didn't have to be hard to be real, that you could make positive music and still sell millions. That crossover success didn't mean selling out. Every rapper who's ever worked with a pop star, every artist who's made clean music and stayed authentic, every executive who came up from the streets, they're all walking a path Heavy D paved. But his legacy is now tangled up in something darker: the Uptown curse, the conspiracy theories, the pattern of deaths that people can't ignore. Heavy D in 2011, Kim Porter in 2018, Andre Harrell in 2020. All natural causes according to official reports, all tragic coincidences according to the law. But in a culture that's seen too many suspicious deaths, too many closed cases, too many unanswered questions, people stopped believing in coincidences. The tell-all book rumor refuses to die, even though no manuscript has ever surfaced, no publisher has come forward, no family member has confirmed it. But that's the thing about conspiracy theories. They don't need proof when the story feels true. And for a lot of people, the idea that Heavy D knew too much, that he was ready to talk, that someone silenced him before he could, that story feels more real than a blood clot from a long flight. Maybe Heavy D did have secrets. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was just a 44-year-old man with heart disease and obesity who took a long flight and paid the ultimate price. Maybe the only conspiracy is the one we create when we can't accept that sometimes good people die for no reason at all. But here's what we know for sure. Heavy D gave Diddy his first shot in the music industry. He gave hip-hop a blueprint for crossover success. He gave the culture joy when it needed it most. He carried Uptown Records on his back and never asked for credit. And when he died, The man whose career he launched, the intern he told Andre to hire, became the only one left standing. Heavy D gave Diddy his shot. He gave hip-hop a smile. He gave the world joy. And on November 8, 2011, exactly 1 month after his comeback, he collapsed and died at 44. The coroner called it natural causes. But in a business where everyone who knew the secrets is now gone, nothing about Heavy D's death feels natural at all.